Hi everyone, it's Kim, the Study Abroad Specialist. In today's video, what I want to do is a little bit different. I wanted to walk you through 10 of the most common visa style terms that you're going to hear. So when you're going through and you're applying for a student visa, it doesn't matter what country you're going to, these are the types of terms that you may hear. And I get questions about these all the time. So I just want to clarify and make a video to help you. So we're going to talk about 10 of them today. There are many more, but we're going to start out with the most common 10 today. So for sponsor, for number one, sponsor essentially means that this is going to be the organization, the school, the governing body sometimes, whoever is going to be giving you the opportunity. So if you're going to a school, going to a college, coming to do an internship somewhere, that is going to be what is considered your sponsor. And it is more and more common nowadays, especially within the past 10 to 15 years, for countries to require that an organization sponsor you. In the past, it was not always like that, but now that's the way it works. It, number one, provides accountability for whoever's in the country, and also to make sure that it is a structured program that you're going to. So that is what sponsor means. So when you see sponsor on there, that essentially means whatever school you're going to or wherever you're going to do work or an internship. So for number two, admissions approval forms, or sometimes in certain cases called visa approval forms, these are going to be the forms that give you the proof of eligibility to get a visa. So for example, here in the US, we have the I-20 form, there's this DS 2019 form. In the UK, there's the CAS letter. There's all different types around the world, but this is basically the form that is going to give you the eligibility to be able to move forward with your visa. And this is something that, again, the sponsor will be able to issue on your behalf so that you have it when you go to apply for your visa. So for number three, the next term that you may see is immigration system or immigration tracking system. So this is essentially where all of your information about your visa is going to be tracked. Usually these systems are run by the hosting body, the hosting government body of whatever country you're going to. So for example, here in the US, we have the CVIS platform. In the UK, there's the CAS platform. In lots of Europe, there is VIS. In Canada, there is IRCC. They're all different ones around the world, but they all work the same in essentially tracking your visa status. And your school is responsible for reporting the information. They talk to each other and they share a lot of connection. In a recent video, I actually talked more about, specifically here in the US, what it means when your school loses their status. So their SEVP status. And I ran through a range of schools that lost their status and what that looked like. And it may be interesting for you to look at that video just to get an idea of how that actually works. But that is what that means whenever you see that term. So for the next term, for immigration advisors, these are going to be the people at your school, at your internship site, at your potential work site that are going to, again, serve as the middle person that's going to be talking to the immigration overall governing body. And so they have different terms. Here in the US, they're usually called designated school officers, and there's usually quite a few of them on whatever campus you're going to, especially if they're used to having lots of international students. There are also responding officers, responsible officers. Overseas, sometimes you may see that they're just called paperwork specialists. Whatever you see that particular term is, that is what it means, and they are there to help you. So they're able to guide you through whatever different types of paperwork you need. A lot of times they will walk through you with the specific forms that you need so that you can move forward with that. I did just want to point out, though, that they are advisors. They're not lawyers, for example. So if you have a legal issue, you need to reach out to an immigration lawyer to move forward with that particular person. Now, occasionally, there are some schools that are lucky enough to have both, where the person who is doing it is also a lawyer. That is awesome, but that's usually pretty rare. So if you need an immigration lawyer, you reach out to someone that can help you with that. They are immigration advisors. They're not supposed to give you any type of legal advice, but they can help you with the forms on hand that you need. For number five, biometrics. This is something that a lot of people always have questions about like, how is it going to be used? What's going to happen? I mean, at this point, who actually knows? All of our information is out there anyway, so let's just pray. But usually biometrics are fingerprinting. So now around the world, I remember when I was first starting out, like in the very beginning of studying abroad, like that was very rare. Like there were only some countries doing it. The UK was like all over it, like from the beginning. But it's very common now for most countries to require fingerprinting. There are some countries that take it a little bit further that want you to do like a sample of blood, even, or even, for example, having your dental records, but that's a little bit less common. So don't really worry about that. But it usually for you is going to mean fingerprinting. And this is something that you're going to need to have on file when you go to get your visa. Now, people often ask, why do they need that? Well, number one, it is a way to be able to track you down. And a lot of times they do use within the system to figure out being able to go through and do those touch points of if someone is overstaying their visa and they think they're going to hide out, that they can come find you. But also, too, if something were to happen to you, unfortunately, it would be a way for the host country to be able to identify you if you didn't have any identification on you and be able to connect those records with your home country. So just keeping that in mind, that it's going to be important. Also, too, I mean, I'm not going to mention this because no one on this channel is going to do it, but if you committed a crime while you're overseas, they can get your fingerprints, but that's not going to happen on this channel. So don't worry about that. But that is one of the primary reasons that they do it, so that they have it on hand. And just to be aware, most people have their biometrics taken when they are just a baby. So that's very common, even in your home country, where you probably have them like in a photo album somewhere, like most of us, especially if we were born in the 80s and 90s, where it's like right next to your little baby photo of like your fingerprints and all of that. Like your home country already has it, so it's a way for your host country to be able to get it. So that's what that means. So the next phrase that you may see are visa and status, or visa status, depending on however the wording is. But essentially what this is this is the actual visa. And on the visa within the passport, I should go pull one of mine out. Basically what it is it's telling you that this is your visa. It's going to give you the list of the country. It's going to give you the term, so how long you can stay, when you got it, all those great things. It's also going to say a specific status, so it could say student status, it could say visitor status, it could say right to remain status, whatever that's going. Well, right to remain, you wouldn't really need one, but like it could say like maybe extended stay, something like that. Whatever country you're going to, they have different names. But this is going to explicitly say what the actual rights are that you have within that particular country that you're going to, in terms of whatever level you're at. So obviously, if you're a student, there's going to also be things on there that are covered, for example, about your work authorization. So how often are you able to work? Like how many hours? All of that will be listed on there. And that's going to be really important. Now, one of the things that a lot of students ask is, should I be walking around with my visa on me and my passport on me? That is not something that I recommend. Whenever I was overseas, I did not do that. Passports are not necessarily the hardest thing to replace, but they can take a longer time to do. And it can be difficult, again, especially if you've traveled around a lot. Like you don't want to lose all that data by losing your passport because you carried it around somewhere, you got pickpocketed, whatever happened. Leave that at home, but have easy access to it. It is something that you will likely use a lot of times if you're trying to open an account or you're trying to do different things. You may need easy access to it, so always know where it is. But I would not recommend doing that. You will get along just fine by having a standard ID of from whatever country you come from, and you'll be just fine using that while you're overseas, just so that they know who you are. If you are going to a place and they ask for visa status, you want to have that. But this is something that is going to be very important to have on hand if for whatever reason you need it to prove that you have your status. And that is essentially what that means. So for number 7, grace period, this is also going to likely be included on your visa, either in the stamp, or it's going to be included on the form that they give you if they give you an extra form when they issue the visa. But this is going to be the grace period of your visa. So this really essentially means how much time do you have once the visa ends to either renew, if you're eligible to do that. So maybe you're going to be a student, but you're going to have a grace period like I did for most of my visas, where it was like 6 months or so. And then after that, you need to figure out what's going on. It could be that you're renewing to a different student visa, or it could be that you're trying to get a different visa in total. But essentially what that means is you usually will have either 3, 4, 6 months, and that's the grace period of figuring out your next move. And one of the tips that I will give you is making sure that you are not within those 6 months trying to figure out your next move. You need to go into the 6 months figuring out your next move. So if your program is ending very soon, you need to start thinking about that so that you're not within the 6 months trying to figure out, especially if you're not going into a set program. If you're trying to find a job, you may not find a job within 6 months. So you need to figure that out ahead of time just so that you're aware of that. But that is usually what grace period means when it comes to visas. So for number 8, for work authorization. So if you have watched any of my videos where I've talked about this, you know that number 1, I'm very, very, very against people overstaying their visa. But also 2, I want you to take it seriously when it comes to your work authorization. And if you do want to work overseas, that you're following all the rules. And on your visa, it will usually state, again, how many hours you can work. For the average person, no matter what country you're going to, it's usually going to be around 20 hours or less. It's considered part-time, especially if you're a student. It's meant to be that way. You have your studies to focus on. Working is just a bonus. And for some countries, it can even be even just 10 hours or less. Whatever that is, you need to stick to it. And we would hope that all employers, no matter who they are going to be following that, but it is in clear writing so that if you do get in trouble, you can't say you didn't know. It usually lists on there how much you can work. And for some countries, they will also even list the certain industries that you can work on your certain visa. So just be clear about that as well and then follow the rules. But that's what work authorization means. So for dependents, for number 9, this is actually not going to be as relevant to most of the students I work with because you are in your 20s and you probably don't have, a family like a husband, wife, and children yet. But if you do and you're watching this, welcome. And essentially what that means is this is going to be people that are dependent on you while you're overseas. So it's likely to be people that are going to be coming with you. The governing body will need to know that as well because they will also need to be issued documentation, and they also need to be clear on how those people are going to be supported. If you're going to be a student and you're coming in to a country, how are your dependents going to be supporting themselves? Because sometimes it's hard or even illegal for them to get a job. So that needs to be made clear right off the bat so that when you go out to fill out those forms, it's understood that they're issuing this visa to you, but that you also may have dependents and you're able to support them. So just something to think about. That's how dependency works. But again, for most students who watch my channel, not as relevant, but I did want to mention it because a lot of times what people think is, well, I'm a dependent on my parent. And yeah, that is true, but you're going to be the person getting the visa. So in this case, dependent does not mean that actual, you're dependent on your parents. It means that you are having a dependent depend on you to come to a country. And then last but not least, for number 10, for residence cards. So this is something that a lot of people who study abroad or live abroad aspire to. So this is essentially your permission to stay. Now, for some countries, it's not just people who have moved on to getting, their towards citizenship, but there are a lot more countries now that issue residence cards that essentially acts more as a type of identification to show like, hey, I'm here for 6 or 7 months and I have the right to be here. This, again, is going to be another something that if you're going to a country that issues that you want to take around in lieu of a passport to be able to show it. And it's pretty rare when you have to show that type of identification, but just to have it on hand if you were to need it is going to be very important. So for any of these 10 phrases, were any of them surprising to you? Have you run into a lot of them? Are there any other phrases that you've come in contact with as you've been filling out your different forms that you're interested in? I would love to talk more about those. Leave a comment below. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.